I punched it.
Hello, everybody. This is Sean Harwell. You are listening to the Never Heard of It podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about a bunch of different movies, typically ones that, crazily enough, you've maybe never heard of. But right now we're continuing our series looking at 1985, and we got two good movies for you today. And then this other guy who is shrouded in a cape tonight and a hood. Say hello, mystery man.
Craig Moorhead. How you doing, Sean?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm all right. I watched some movies this week. I'd like to talk about them.
Well, which two movies did you watch?
I watched Spies Like Us and Into the Night.
That's crazy. Did you know that both of those were directed by John Landis?
I do now.
You do now?
I knew it before, but I also know it now.
Yeah, you would have known this if you listened to the Tee-Up episode where we talk a lot about the sort of making of and people involved in these movies. So if you haven't listened to that, go check it out. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We don't care where you start. We're just glad you're here, right?
That's right. That's right. Everyone is welcome. Come on in.
Come on in. The water is, it's okay.
That's right. Sean and I record this sitting in a hot tub every Wednesday evening.
It gets real pruny. It gets real pruny by the end of this.
Super pruned.
Go check out our website, neverheardpodcast.com. That's going to take you everywhere you need to go. You can look at back episodes. You can check out posters. You can check out some reviews from guest writers that we've had. Lots of fun stuff. And then come say hello on Facebook and Twitter and all those places. So why don't you do that right now?
We'll wait.
These are our newly arrived surgeons, Drs. Trowbridge and Greenbaum.
Doctor?
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 And doctor. Well, we miss anyone?
Hey, Craig, let's talk about Spies Like Us.
Let's talk about it.
I kind of want to start at the very end this week.
Novel.
I mean, I'm talking about the very end, like the end credits.
Oh, all right.
Feature music, as we mentioned last week, by Paul McCartney, a song conveniently titled Spies Like Us. And one of our listeners was giving me grief today because I said in the tee-up, I didn't remember that there was a song by Paul McCartney called Spies Like Us, period, let alone in this movie that was, 10th overall this year and made a ton of money that I remember seeing a bunch as a kid. And so I would just like to reiterate, I was only 8 years old at the time that this movie came out. Mm-hmm. Now he tells me, this nameless listener, who, thank you for listening to the show, that this song was a big sensation and was all over MTV. Do you recall that, Craig? I know you had MTV at your young age. You're more hip to these things than I am, so come on, so let's set the record straight.
I am super hip, but a part of being hip means you're beyond what's going on at the time. Yeah, so I was well beyond MTV, and in fact, so beyond it that my folks didn't even have cable at our house. So whoa. I didn't have MTV, but what I did have, Sean, is I had this song recorded on a tape off of the radio, and I listened to it a million trillion different times.
Well, here's the second part of what I want to establish right up front is this song is terrible. It is not a good song.
No, it's not.
I had this argument that he was saying, well, no, it was cool then at the time, and it sounds like that's what you're saying to your young ears, that you felt compelled to record this. And I would just like to make the claim that your ears at the time were wrong, and your ears now, if you think this is a good song, I'm not saying you, Craig, anybody,
right?
Your ears are also wrong right now because it's not good. And I will never claim to be an aficionado of Mr. McCartney's. Obviously, I know quite a bit of his catalog, both with the Beatles and Wings, etc.
Oh, the Beatles, that's right.
There's a million other songs that this man has done that are way, way better than this. So I don't even know why you'd bother to listen. Like, why would you listen to this song?
Well, Sean, opinions are like belly buttons. They're filled with lint.
Yeah.
And they're pretty much useless. I don't know. But I'll say this. I think, and this is not to make excuses, a major attraction for me to this song is that it had to do with a movie. There's some other movie this year out of 1985 that had a song called Power of Love. I can't remember the title of the movie, but Power of Love. I must have listened to that way more, twice as much as this one, because it was attached to a movie. It was attached to a movie, and when I heard the song, I would think about the movie. So I love that. I mean, listening to this song now, I mean, it's not even like mundane bad. It's not good.
Annoyingly
it's not a good song.
bad,
You
right?
can't get the whole way through it. You just kind of want it to stop.
Let me ask you this while we're on this subject in our music podcast that we're doing tonight. The Goonies song, Cyndi Lauper.
Right.
I mean, that wasn't like a big thing, was it? That song?
Oh yeah, that was a big one for me. Because seriously, again, it was the song of the Goonies.
No,
but that song, that's also a better song though. That's a song that has a melody and a thing.
Okay,
I have no idea what the lyrics are to that song.
Goonies are good
but
enough.
Like that song's got it's got something. It's got something. I'll argue, in our next in the other movie we're going to talk about, Into the Night, the song Into the Night, which is also not a great song, but I would argue is a more listenable song than Spies Like Us.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that that's settled, let's actually talk about the movie. Yeah. And I'm going to just give the quick synopsis because I know a lot of people are familiar with this movie, but perhaps it's been a while since you've seen it. And perhaps there are a few of you that have never seen this at all. So here we go. This is actually from IMDb, but it's lower down. It's in the storyline section, so it's slightly better than what you get at the top of the page for whatever reason. It's probably because it's user-generated. 2 low-level government employees, Emmett Fitzhume, played by Chevy Chase, and Austin Milbarge, played by Dan Aykroyd, which those are great names, by the way.
Great names.
Just good comedy names, solid. Are chosen for a top-secret CIA mission. They are unsuitable as CIA agents, but are deliberately chosen for this reason, as their mission is a decoy one, and they are expendable. After being fast-tracked through training, they are parachuted into Pakistan, where all manner of adventures await them. So that was written by a user named Grant SS. Thank you, Grant SSS.
I think it's
Grants.
Yeah.
Well, Grants, you did a good job there. I think that is a fair assessment of what this plot is. Basically, you got 2 unlikely government low-level employees in various capacities thrust into foreign service as spies, so they think. And I guess technically speaking, they are, but their mission is of no importance whatsoever other than to distract from the real spies who are trying to get into Russia because Russia is bad. Right. And there is a missile involved. Craig, clearly you love this movie enough to have recorded the theme song on cassette.
Yeah.
We both saw it a bunch as kids, not as one kid.
As one united child.
That'd be very weird. I didn't know you then. What'd you think about Spies Like Us watching it 32 years later?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I never particularly loved this movie outside of it being a movie.
You got low standards right there, huh?
It's as a kid, it was pretty low standards. You got to imagine how excited I was when a movie was good.
Yeah, wow.
Because I wanted to watch any movie, but it was never my favorite. It's got some really good bits in it, like some good chuckles. But I gotta say this one, and I never going in, I knew that. I always had this lukewarm feeling about this movie, and so I was like, well, maybe I'll be able to figure it out this time. And I think I've kind of divined what it is that's lacking for me. But yeah, I mean, it was never my favorite. What about you?
I think there is about half of a pretty darn funny movie in here, and the other half not so much, but it's all kind of mixed together. It's not like you just watch for 45 minutes like, oh, this is great, and then it's all downhill from there. No, that's not necessarily the case for me. I do think the first act is stronger than the rest of the movie, but there's still some good jokes here and there. I think it's sort of like a C+ kind of movie to me. There's nothing offensively bad about it.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything completely, aside from the fact that it's Russia and missiles and things like that feels exceptionally dated as far as the humor is concerned. It's just kind of one that you watch and then go do something else. And maybe you'll think about this song a couple of days later because it's not good.
But it'll stick right in your head.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know that there's anything necessarily in the real content of this movie that is really going to stick with you at this point. because I think I don't know. I was thinking about it also in just terms of like a comedy that is coming out these days. It kind of feels like you really got to have that comedic engine so that the movie is not only funny throughout, but it's funny in servicing the plot. Like the jokes are building the story to the resolution, you know?
Right.
And here I felt like there was the plot and then there was the comedy, and the two didn't necessarily gel, I guess.
I think you're right. And I think it sort of either needed to be a string of sketches where the plot kind of didn't matter, and that was a part of what was funny.
Yeah.
Is like it could just be completely gonzo, and or it needed to stick more to a plot, because there's too much that honestly just doesn't make sense to me in characterization or plot or any of that, and I get kind of hung up on it, and then I think it kills some of the jokes. I think it just kills some of the punchlines for me.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of what it is. So then you get to the end, and you have this whole ending that felt like, oh, we were always headed here, but it kind of didn't feel like we were. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure it felt inevitable to me, and also I just think there just wasn't that much for them to do in the back half. Like they weren't doing enough, I think, maybe in the simplest terms, in the back half of the movie.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this then as we kind of break this down a little bit, because I don't know, I remember somebody saying this on just like one of the TV shows that I was working on, and thinking about like, okay, you got like a half hour of television, right?
Yeah.
People are going to kind of remember and hang on to, let's say, like 3 scenes. So if like you have 3 good, funny, like 3 killer funny moments in the show, in an episode, you're gold.
Right.
That's what you want, and that's what you want people to recall. And then everything else is kind of icing on the cake.
Just don't blow it. Yeah.
Yeah, don't blow it. You got to have those, or you don't have an episode. So what are like the comedic kind of things that still maybe work for you, or that you recall just from watching this? Because the one real solid memory I had of this movie was them in the centrifuge, where they're testing the G-force capacity and their ability to handle that,
right,
and the faces, and then getting out in the hair.
Right.
And I don't know, I didn't laugh that much while they were in the device, the capsule, but them walking down the hall with those ridiculous faces, that still made me laugh.
It works pretty well.
Yeah, maybe we should just kind of like catalog some of the good comedic stuff that you took away from it this time.
Well, yeah, let's be positive. Why not? Like I always liked the cut from when they're surrounded by guys in, I believe, where are they, in Afghanistan or Pakistan?
They start in Pakistan, yes.
Yeah, and then they're surrounded by guys on horses, and Aykroyd says, "Oh wait, these are freedom fighters. Like they're on our side." And so Chevy Chase stands up and says, "We're Americans," and it cuts to them hanging upside down.
Yeah,
that cut always worked for me. Like that, exactly. Like his delivery and that cut, beautiful. And some of the test, I'm real mixed on the whole test sequence. Like the testing sequence seems like it's strange. It's just so built to be, here's a real showstopper. But there are some jokes that are just dead on arrival, and then there are other ones that like are pretty sharp and work really well. So I don't know.
And it's also, it's just so inconsequential to the rest of the movie, basically. There's nothing that they learn in those sequences that I recall that comes into play later on, basically, No. And this isn't a movie about them going through basic training or anything like that. It is just a little brief aside in this movie that Stripes was funnier. And, there's other examples, I think, that did that well. So, yeah, I'm with you, though. Some of those were like the water ski thing, or it wasn't water ski, but it was like, we're going to test your ability to stay afloat at high speeds. And like I knew exactly where that was going. I could kind of remember it. And then the next thing you know, they're just jerked off of a dock at like crazy high speed. And that made me laugh. It's still, that's
a lot
just
of that.
Like,
yeah. Like those quick things. Well, and that, like you pointing out that it's supposed to be kind of a Hope Crosby movie helped a lot for me in those bits. Because it was like, these are just quick bits. Like they have to dive into the mud. They're just being shot at for no reason, which would never happen in 1,000 years.
I know, even with blanks, it's
it's
too close.
Yeah, so I love all that. I love the old Blues Brothers joke I always say it's from Blues Brothers, but it's like all the soldiers behind them saying hut 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 hut. Hut.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole bit, everything kind of works for me in all of that stuff. So yeah, so a lot of the timing stuff works really well, I feel like.
What about we'll go a little bit before that, when Chevy Chase cheats on his Foreign Service exam. That was another one I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this. Like, he and Aykroyd, the setup is they're both going to take this exam to basically try and get what would essentially be a promotion, and a more glamorous one than what they're currently doing in their respective jobs. Chase comes walking in late with an eye patch and a fake, like not only a fake cast, but an entirely fake arm in a cast.
Right.
All of that is just a device for him to cheat. He's got paper under the eye patch. He's got paper in his mouth. He's got paper, cheat sheets in the cast. But boy, I did not remember just how long that scene goes on, and how long they play that gag. And also, that's Frank Oz, I believe, the moderator for the exam.
The very angry supervisor.
Yeah.
He just seems annoyed to begin with.
Some of that stuff, I mean, he rips a fart. Like, Chase rips a fart.
Yeah.
2 seconds into this foreign exam, when the whole room has gone quiet, which I didn't really get a laugh out of me until he then got, like, somehow managed to get the guy in the next seat to, like, take fault for it and say, excuse me, which is ridiculous. Like, that made me laugh. And him, like, overly aggressively clearing his throat to try and get Aykroyd's attention kind of made me laugh. But the scene on the whole, that scene, I think it's one that maybe does sort of recall an earlier era of comedy, because it was just so unbelievable. Like, it's so unbelievable, that scene, that would be put up with and tolerated at all. I mean,
well, and that's what kind of kills me on it. That, and these guys don't know each other.
Yep.
I have no idea why Aykroyd would help him.
None. Yeah.
I don't know why he would help him, and why he gets in on the act when Chase starts pretending like he's having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of kills it for me, because I'm just like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it feels like you're trying to milk comedy out of something that's just not funny. Like, I expect Aykroyd to say no, and for Chase to, finagle a way to get the answers from him anyway or something. But, like, I don't know. That just totally throws me. Suddenly they're a team, and I don't get why.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice because they are set up as an odd couple. Because Aykroyd is clearly intelligent, his character, who's working in encryption, I believe, and has proven himself to be very technologically savvy with any of those devices and the mechanical stuff. Just as an actor, that dude, man, exposition is just like, he just makes it into like a dessert. I don't understand how he delivers. He's so good at that.
Totally.
But Chase is sort of the like lazy rogue in this movie. He's the guy that's, when you first meet him, is at his desk watching the Ronald Reagan musical with headphones on and not doing anything. And, is sleeping with Donna Dixon, clearly sort of hoping that she can get him out of taking the exam at all, I think. Or just get him to get it, a pass without having to actually do any of the work.
Right.
So it's like, okay, I get it. These two guys are different. They're not going to like each other at first, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do. Like, that's what you do with two guys like that. And so, it's the first scene that they meet each other. Chase is all over him trying to cheat and like is asking what KGB stands for and all this stuff. There's just no reason for Aykroyd to go. Like, there's nothing about anything we've seen from this guy that would suggest he'd go along with that.
And
right?
I guess I wonder, I kind of like, I like the way that Aykroyd's character is set up. I like that whole predicament. There's somebody keeping him down there, you know, and like this test is gonna, could break him out of it or whatever. But a part of me kind of feels like why wasn't Dan Aykroyd the guy who sits across from Chevy Chase at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean that would have made a lot of sense too.
It kind of seems like he needed to have something at stake with Chevy Chase. It doesn't make any sense that he would help him. Like, doesn't make any.
Well, my guess is that they're doing this Hope Crosby thing. They have to become friends, right?
Yeah.
And so we get, because like that's just what this kind of movie is, I guess. It's like you can't have, even if they're an odd couple, they're not going to be bickering. They're not going to be like yelling at each other. That's not the jokes that they're going for in this thing, which it's clear after that exam scene that that's where the shift happens, and suddenly these guys are buddies,
Right.
Why not just make them buddies from the start then?
Sure.
I don't know. So, I mean, I kind of understand the desire to have them just go ahead and become friends and not have to spend that real estate like, okay, like you don't get along with me, I don't get along with you, you're different than me, I'm different than you, but God, damn it, we got to work together to get through. Like, you can skip all that. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I don't miss that.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
But then, I'm just like, Stripes again. Bill Murray and Harold Ramis like knew each other when they enlisted, and they were buddies. Like, and that worked.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that. Like, you don't have to do like any exercising to explain that. It's just okay. These guys are friends. Like, I get it, and that's it. So it was an interesting choice, man. It really is. It just neuters some of the comedy here and there. But again, we're supposed to be talking about positive stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, no, totally.
What else was funny to you in this movie?
Loved ninjas. I love ninjas.
That was good.
Especially the one who does all the sword play and then the trees fall down. Works beautifully for me.
I liked a line that Chevy Chase had in that scene. And basically, like, these guys were they just like dropped into the forest out of an airplane during a night training, and they're suddenly like besieged upon by ninjas. Yeah. I think Chevy Chase is the one who said, "Stop right there, and I'll bring back the sun." And I was just like, "What?" Like that.
That was good.
I mean, even as like a riffing thing, I'm like, where did that come from? But it made me laugh.
Yeah, totally works for me. Once they're in the desert and they're looking for their contact, right? And then these two dudes, one with a sweater over his shoulder, all just decked in pastels. These two like preppy yuppies.
They look like 50s teen idols or something.
Yeah. They're like, we're your contacts. And it just sort of reminded me of how much it always, like, I feel like Landis hates yuppies.
Yeah.
Trading places, Animal House, like all that stuff. Like, to see these guys come up and they're just such yuppies. I love that. I love it. It makes me feel like I'm in a Landis movie, and that makes me happy.
Yeah. And they turn out not really to be yuppies, at least of the sort, because they're working for the Russians. I kind of got a good laugh out of just, they're dropped out of another plane in a crate into Pakistan, and just like a very small community where the crate just lands and takes out the corner of these villagers' hut and opens up, and there's these two buffoons in there eating Tostitos chips and drinking Budweiser. That made me laugh. I mean, I sort of wish they had gone further with that kind of thing.
Right.
Just like the sheer laziness of these guys, and just like the American slob sort of cultural difference that they could have gotten out of putting these guys in a place like Pakistan or moving into Afghanistan and Russia.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too. And a part of what was funny to me about the way that went down was, like, they both seem pretty unflappable about the fact that they're in a crate falling through the sky.
Yeah.
And it's like, so either if they're two guys going through all these like scary moments and they're just totally nonchalant about it, that's one movie. And then if they're gonna panic about everything, that's the other movie. I feel like we get both of them for some reason. Like, sometimes they're panicked and sometimes they're just not.
Yeah, so the threat of real danger, and even that these guys are going to be captured, is pretty limited in this movie.
Yes.
And I think that is something that would be different if it were done today. I mean, I think you would have to make that threat a little more real.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of with you with that. Let's talk about the doctor scene. Because that's where it started to lose me a little bit, honestly, on the comedic side. So these guys, after they've kind of come into contact with these guys who turn out to be Russian spies, and they escape them, they move, into another village of sorts, and they find who they think are their real contacts, British man and an American woman, and they're doctors, and they think that Chase and Aykroyd are surgeons that they've been expecting. And like, part of the deal is, you guys are the best. You're going to operate on the Khan of this tribe, and that's going to prove to all of these other soldiers that we're actually on their side, and we're here to help them, and we're part of the fight against the Russians, basically. And, of course, it's a classic 1985 pretend to be someone you're not, private resort kind of. I mean, we've seen it a bunch.
Yeah.
They take it pretty far. And the only real gag they got out of that was that there's a group of doctors and they all call each other doctor. And so, you have that like stilted conversation with doctor. And that's, by the way, we talked about all the directors that make cameos in this movie. Definitely Terry Gilliam is in that scene, among others. He plays, I think, a German doctor, which is kind of funny.
Yep.
But I don't know. I just, like, to me, that is a bit of dated humor, That's kind of just those jokes that they were getting out of that scene, which I think maybe reaches its finality when Bob Hope makes his cameo and he's just playing golf in the middle of this desert and hits the ball into their tent. And even there, I was like, it's just that didn't really get a smile out of me. I don't know. Am I cold-hearted?
Yeah, I feel the same way, although the joke of him appearing and playing golf, I wanted more of the movie to be more like that.
Exactly. It could be Airplane or something, yeah.
Yeah, but like with this bit, first you have some super funny, what today we might call sexual assault.
Yeah.
In the tent. But in the surgery, for some reason, 3 of the doctors in this village are helping Dan Aykroyd figure out where to cut this guy.
Yeah. And
I just, again, it's one of those things where I'm just like, that's fine, but it kills everything. Like, I don't, like, the pressure here is they have to try and take an organ out of this guy. Like, they're
it's a funny setup.
Of course, they're not going to come forward and say, we're not actually doctors. But yeah, the whole thing is like, how are you going to get through this? And then when something like that happens, it just feels like it feels like the rules have been broken. Like, no one should be helping them.
Yeah.
Like, why are they nodding or shaking their heads? It's like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's just some of that I think is a product of its time. But it's kind of interesting to look at that scene too, just comedically. I think the button of the guy on the table coming out of anesthesia and staring at them and gasping and then dying is actually pretty, like, that's a pretty funny way out of that scene, right?
Yes,
and one
definitely.
that I'm like, I forgot about, and I was like, oh, okay, like, that's pretty good. Because then it's, it doesn't matter that they're not surgeons, really, because the guy died on the table, and that's going to piss off the entire village. So it feels like, that there again, like, if you're redoing this today, I guarantee you, like, nobody else is trying to help these guys. And the second that they really let on in an obvious way that they're not surgeons, the gig is up, right? So you play it like straight and really get how close can you get to that moment before they put a scalpel into this guy with no clue what they're doing, and then him wake up on the table and die. Like, I don't know. It's interesting to look at like something like that where, you got a great entrance and a great exit, I think, for the whole bit. It's just those little shades of execution that somehow make it like a different type of comedy than what you maybe thought you were going to get going into that scene.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Like, you almost want them to be completely successful.
Yeah, which
like,
that would have been funny too.
There's no doubt in anyone's mind until the guy dies. Like,
yeah,
or
that'd have been hilarious.
Yeah.
They just take something out of this guy, and it's just like, well, that looks like that would have been interesting. But kind of after this moment, like I sort of mentioned, I don't know, that there wasn't really a good standout moment of humor to me. I don't recall any one like big gag from that, because they're basically realizing that the 2 doctors that they met with, initially when they came into that camp, are headed for the Russian border as well. Right. And then Chase is taken captive. And I mean, look, the guy, I love his delivery. So, like, I don't mind. I mean, especially, like, in this era, it's like I'm happy to just kind of hear Chevy Chase do his thing.
Right.
Some of that stuff is funny. Some of the lines are funny. But I just don't remember, like, a good, like, comedic set piece or anything like that.
I don't either. And let me ask you this question, because this is something that was popping up in my mind constantly during this bit, especially, like, during that the Russians intercept them, and then they end up in this village, and they have to do this surgery, and then they're on this bus where they end up seeing those 2 surgeons and figuring out they're also spies. So the whole way through that, I'm trying to figure out how the decoy spy plan is supposed to work.
You're asking the wrong guy, Craig.
Yeah.
If you're looking for answers.
Like that's when it really became clear to me, because it was like, but if those two are the spies that we're supposed to be decoying away from, what is it that we've done here?
Like, what the hell were they doing as surgeons,
How did our decoys end up in the same place as they did? Like, if you're trying to split people off.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. And honestly, it's not important at all. It shouldn't,
No.
like, this kind of movie should just be nonstop weirdness to an extent, and it shouldn't, like, that should be the last thing I'm thinking about. But then I couldn't help thinking about it. I was just like, how are they supposed to they were successful. They decoyed those two guys away. But I don't know why. I don't know why those guys found them instead of finding the other two spies. I don't know.
It's a bit coincidental. I mean, obviously, clearly Aykroyd and Chase were not supposed to make contact with the other two guys, the other two agents. And yet they did in a very large country. So it is a bit convenient in that overlap there, I think, as well. It's building really upon the device that Chase has the hots for Miss Donna Dixon and Karen Boyer, the woman pretending to also be a surgeon or a doctor, and is sort of following her. And, I liked some of that conversation, too, about thinking with your dick and things. Some of that stuff. Got me through high school, like some of that stuff.
There's some good throwaways, for sure.
Yeah, and it also is, to me, that's just, that is consistent with the character that they established up front with Chevy Chase there. But yeah, once you sort of get into them having to actually act to kind of do the right thing, and get Chase out of there and get this missile business. A lot of that is playing sort of like fast and loose with reality, I think, as well, and just sort of the serious nature of it. Because when they're hiding behind a stack of firewood and there's just machine guns blazing at them, I was like, I don't know about this. And also, did you notice in that moment too, so Chase has been held hostage in this house, he's captive, and they're trying to, the Russians are trying to beat information out of him and get information out. They've got posters of Warren Beatty's Reds and Dr. Zhivago on the walls of this cabin, which, kind of like this Landis here. Aykroyd comes to save him, and there's a big shootout, and like I said, they're hiding behind stacks of firewood. And as soon as they leave on horse, they then meet up with Boyer. And, what was she doing the whole time? She didn't... she sort of made herself known with Aykroyd that it was not her or her nation's priority to save Chase, which I get. Right. But then there was no moment where Aykroyd and Chase then had to say, look, okay, we're going to help you, or, we're in on this too. We're both agents. We're all agents, but, I get that you didn't want to come save him, but blah, blah. They didn't have that sort of reunion moment. It's just like, oh, there she is. Right. And now they're just following her. That was a little weird to me.
Yeah.
And then should we talk about the Russians that like to dance a little?
Yeah.
And get into the missile sequence? Because this too, as we mentioned in the tee-up, originally they shot an ending where the entire world is destroyed by nuclear war, and that's definitely not the case in the movie that made it into the theater. And oh man, I still wish it was for any number of reasons. But I have to point out that among the guards, the Russian guards who are guarding this missile on a truck, one of them is played by Vanessa Angel, a very beautiful Vanessa Angel, who Craig played Lisa on the Weird Science TV show.
That's where I recognize that name.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. In some ways, I like everything. I kind of like how that stuff went down. Again, there's never a moment where I thought anybody was in any danger, really, Of
course not.
With those Russian guards, and then even with the rocket and the missile. But there were a few surprises there. The biggest being that after our American heroes take control of the situation and type in the code or whatever into this missile, which I'm not 100% clear about what they thought it was going to do.
Right.
But they did not think it was going to launch on American soil, and blow up half of America,
Right.
which it appears to be headed to do. But after that moment, you get Chase turning to Donna Dixon saying, well, you want to go out on a bang? And do you remember her response?
Well, first she says no.
I wrote out, she said, well, if we were in a bar, I'd throw a drink in your face. But under the circumstances, it's not a bad idea.
Ugh. Yep.
And I had this discussion with my wife, and I don't want to embarrass her or anything. I was like, but do you really think you would be able to...
No.
Like, even remotely consider being intimate with anybody in any capacity if you thought that nuclear retaliation, because like Aykroyd times it to like, we got about 42 minutes left before the entire nuclear winter breaks out, basically. Like, there's attack is going to happen. I get, it's a comedy.
Sure.
But I don't know. I don't see strangers going down that road.
Well, I mean, you have a guy who has been continuously hitting on you and absolutely molesting you.
Yeah.
And that's the guy you're going to say sure to? I mean, dude, what if he's terrible in bed? Like, that's no way to go out at all.
That's the last thing you're going to take.
Your plans are, that's why I really wouldn't. How could you concentrate? Exactly.
Yeah.
But luckily they all pair off. And I'd also like to say at this point, all this stuff, and I think it has a lot to do with the guys who were in the bunker back in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
This ending just feels deathly slow to me.
It was a little bit, yeah.
Like, there's some point where I just wrote down, like, why does this feel so slow? And part of it was because every time those guys would okay, initiate the, ground reflectors or whatever. And I mean, it would just, this thing would start raising out of the ground, going like a mile an hour. You're going to watch the whole thing. Elmer Bernstein music, like pumping away. I'm like, oh God, that was killing me.
I don't recall like a ticking clock either. Maybe there was. And that seems like a really easy thing to build into that kind of situation.
Sure.
I'm kind of with you. And I was saving even talking about that military plot, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think it was just like the stakes just had never felt that intensely dangerous.
No.
Now, here's my one version of this where maybe that could have worked. And it is like, we've got 42 minutes left before nuclear winter, complete retaliation and WW3. You want to go out with a bang? And then you just sort of like cut to and like they're all having sex. You completely just go off the rails of reality. You make it as absurd as possible. And then, at the height of lust, that's when the entire world gets blown to bits,
Sure.
Like if that's, their original ending was that everything got destroyed. Like I do feel like in some ways having that ending would have made this decision for these people to do this a little more like palpable or believable, or not even believable, but just fun. Like it would have been, it would have played in it. Yes.
Yeah.
And instead, the ending that you do get is these exact same group of people are still kind of paired off, and they're basically deciding, who gets control of what land, or, who's going to have nukes where, basically, on the map. They're playing Risk, more or less, but with real life consequences. And I don't remember particularly anything funny about that scene, and it's just an ending. It feels like just an ending to me in a way.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's true.
Let's talk a little bit about the government stuff. Basically, we mentioned you've got Bruce Davison in there, and I think Tom Haddon was another one of those guys. Steve Forrest, like some of these heavies, like you've seen these people before. They're the ones that they're plotting this out, that Chase and Aykroyd will be the decoys, and then you're finding out that part of the plan basically is these military war hawks want to launch this missile at the U.S. because they've got this Star Wars satellite defense system, right. But that they can use that, and U.S. will be completely safe, but it would then give them an excuse to launch an attack on Russia. And doing so will disarm Russia and will resolve that situation for good. Killing millions and millions of people in the process, right? But hey, that's how you get a movie and drama. That in of itself is interesting. I mean, you've seen it before in Strangelove and things like that. But here, I mean, there is no cross-section. Like, Chase and Aykroyd, I don't think ever appear in front of any of those people, right?
They're only in a room with them once, I think, when they're watching the test scene.
Yes, when they're the footage from the exam, yeah.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah, there's no real comeuppance for those guys, at least not from the hands of Aykroyd and Chase. And so again, like it neuters the stakes a little bit, because here they were sent to basically what was supposed to be their death. And then, not only that, they survive Pakistan to then play a part in launching a nuclear weapon that's going to start nuclear war against Russia, and defeat Russia and kill millions of people. And with the ending they then filmed, it's sort of like not only they didn't get comeuppance, but they're still working for these guys, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're still a part of the military, core there. So that kind of bugged me a little bit about the whole plot of that.
Well, yeah, I kind of feel like the military side of the plot started to feel really detached in a way, and I kind of felt like, I don't know if this would just be too formulaic, but it seemed like Bruce Davison and the other dude, it seems like it should have been them completely in control, and this was their plan to launch the thing against the United States and then use Star Wars and then launch stuff back. Like, that should have been their plan, and then all they're doing after they let Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd go, once they send them overseas, all they're doing the rest of the movie is just seeing how Chase and Aykroyd are completely ruining their plan.
Yeah.
Like, that to me felt like that's what that should be. But then you got these two other guys on top of those two guys who have the plan, and then those two guys are the ones like, what? That's bad. And I don't know, it just starts to feel like, I don't know how to feel. It's kind of muddy.
I kind of get like it's a bit of that chain of command thing where it's like, okay, what does it take for a nuclear weapon to get launched? Does it really just take one bad apple to be able to screw up that entire chain of events? And so I think that's maybe where they were going with some of that thinking, and also just trying to have a little surprise to that plot, because otherwise there's not much really to it. Sure. I will say, like, Landis, I mean, aside from, I think some of the pacing stuff there at the end, like, Landis still manages to make some of that stuff feel kind of cool. I mean, I love the drive-in setting as like this abandoned drive-in as sort of like the facade for this headquarters, and that's where we see Joel Cohen and B.B. King. And by the way, like, we should talk about this too, like, and we'll definitely Into the Night, he gets pretty good performances out of like every director that's in this thing that has a line. Yeah. I mean, there's like even Joel Cohen, I'm just like, I don't know, no, he's ever like you see him in interviews and he's like completely deadpan, and it's just like you're not expecting any kind of performance whatsoever, but he's good enough in his little bit part here. And there were moments with some of that where they're being brought in this place and they're going underground, and they're like, you get the little elevator and then you're in this like secret layer, where I kind of wondered, in some ways, is this movie sort of like this is what Men in Black looks like in 1985, right? Like, you get this comedy that can appeal to people. You've got this government agent involvement. You've got missiles and Russians, and then two guys front and center who are providing you jokes, right? And then so in the 90s, you start inserting aliens and CGI, and then like it just evolves from that, where now it's like like comedies. It definitely feels like, in a lot of ways, to get a big studio comedy on the ground now, it can't just be a comedy in a lot of ways. It's got to be like a hybrid of sorts. I mean, even like Thor, which I haven't seen, Ragnarok, like you were telling me, like it definitely feels like a comedy as much as anything else,
for sure.
Which is great. I don't know. I just kind of wonder, like, if this is sort of, and even we'll talk about it with Back to the Future, like, where like some of this is sort of like reaching new levels as far as like that sort of like hybridization of comedy with another genre. And clearly people went and saw this movie. It did very, very well. Does that surprise you, having watched it again?
No, I mean, especially at the time, it doesn't surprise me at all. Like, I feel like you've got Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase in a movie, done. Landis is doing it. Like, it'll feel familiar enough, It's fun enough. Like, I don't feel surprised that it did as well as it did. Like, if it was $200 million or something, I'd be like, that's a bit much.
Yeah, if it had made more than Back to the Future, I think I would have been like, whoa, this is completely uncalled. But I don't know. I mean, I think I'm with you in that for the time and in the context of it, of what Chase is at this time, what Aykroyd is, and Landis, and especially, I still think, it's goofy funny seeing these guys in some of these costumes. I think they get a lot of mileage out of that, and it was on the poster, and I'm sure in the trailers, right? And that probably got people to the theaters. But as far as being like a better comedy than, Breakfast Club or Weird Science, or I don't know. I think there's definitely comedies, Lost in America, I mean, that are better movies, better comedies that didn't do anything remotely close to this kind of business.
Agreed.
Let's talk a little bit about See You Next Wednesday.
Yes, let's do that.
Did you spot the poster in Spies Like Us?
It was like we want you in the Army poster, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Now, I did just a tidbit of research on this because we mentioned it briefly, I think, last time. But I did read that I don't know why he latched onto this phrase, really, but it apparently is the last line of dialogue spoken by Frank Poole in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey when he has that video phone conversation with his parents.
Right.
See you next. Yeah, and what a weird thing to just kind of, and it's been in all. I mean, now there's other movies that have no connection to Landis whatsoever that use it. And I think Deadpool had it up, and there's so many other things. But yeah, as we said, he usually gets that somewhere into every one of his movies, and I did not see it in Into the Night, so you'll have to tell me where you caught it if you did.
Oh, but I did.
Last thing for me on Spies Like Us is I just wanted to mention that I didn't even realize that this movie was PG until today. I thought it was PG-13, even the whole time while I was watching it.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy because IMDb has sort of the breakdown for the certification here, and it says there are 2 instances of sex and nudity, 1 of violence and gore, 11 of profanity, 1 of alcohol, drugs, and smoking, and 1 frightening and intense scenes. And that clearly would be PG-13 territory today, right? I mean, there's no question.
I wonder if this was a rated R movie, would it have been funnier? Would they have been able to go places that would have been a little funnier?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think that might be a good way to lead us into the night.
Ed Oken can't sleep. Every day he has breakfast.
Oh, that's Stan.
Every day he goes to work. Every day he comes home.
You're losing your mind, Ed.
One day he comes home early. That night he takes a drive. And Diana falls into his life.
The synopsis, I'm going to go with the IMDb synopsis of Into the Night because it's so short and could describe so many movies, which is what I like about it.
Those are always the best.
A discouraged man gets caught up in the dangerous activities of a woman on the run. It's a bit vague maybe, but it's also, can't argue with it. That's pretty much what this movie is.
Yeah.
So we've got Into the Night. It's Jeff Goldblum. Stars as Ed Oken, who's a guy in a humdrum marriage who learns his wife is cheating on him, and he's not feeling so great about life in general when Michelle Pfeiffer jumps in his car being chased by Iranians shooting at her. Just the classic American dream. So Sean, you had never seen this.
Correct.
How did you feel about this movie?
I liked it. I think it's the better of the 2 movies. For sure. Pretty easy for me to say that, I think. And I'd say it's a little uneven. Parts of it feel a little slow to me. Tonally, it's a bit all over the place, but I kind of liked it because of that. it reminded me of, just a different type of like movie. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I see that more now, and especially maybe in the 90s where you had movies that were both violent and funny, from, moments in Reservoir Dogs and what Tarantino was doing, Trainspotting and elsewhere. And even maybe a little something like Baby Driver from this year. And so I think maybe that's my understanding of why it didn't quite do that well at the box office. It was in the bottom half of these 100 movies that we've looked at here, or 180 or whatever it's on Box Office Mojo, and I can kind of see that. I can see that it maybe had a hard time finding an audience in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think on the whole, it's pretty interesting. There's some good stuff in here, and there's some stuff that I think lacks like human reality, for sure. There's some motivations and things, but I'm not sure why people are doing what they're doing. But yeah, on the whole, I kind of came away thinking that was good. I don't know that I'm dying to watch it again immediately, but I kind of dug it. What about you?
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, you've got Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer in pretty much every scene.
Yeah, they're both really good.
And the two of them are great. And they were not first choices, as I understand.
Really?
They were not first choices at all. But I mean, man, like they're just both so. This sounds like such a weak bit of praise. They're so watchable.
Yeah.
Like I just watch the hell out of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, exactly. It's. I guess maybe it's just a part of it just being a fairly unexpected movie. In a lot of ways, there's enough. I don't know. It almost seems more like a bunch of sketches than Spies Like Us does. The way they kind of move around, and they move around from villain to villain in a way, and then you got David Bowie in your face suddenly, and then he's gone, and then you got this other person, and I don't know. I really, I think probably more than anything, what I like about this over Spies Like Us. And maybe you feel differently. I couldn't tell from what you said exactly, but I felt like these two characters, I understood better their motivations throughout the movie than I did in Spies Like Us. Like their characters seem much more consistent in general, and I feel like it should be like Ed's motivation to stay with her through the night should be the weakest part of it.
Yeah.
But I buy it from the setup. Like I have enough from the setup of his life that I'm like, fine, I can go along with this.
I would argue not only that, there are multiple moments where he says, "This is crazy. I'm done. I'm out of here. Like I'm gonna get a cab. I'm gonna go home."
Mm-hmm.
And they keep finding inventive ways to, sustain that and draw that out and have that not happen and bring him into the plot. And I mean, there were constant moments where, danger has happened and he has every reason to be concerned and want to get the hell out of there. And it feels like that's going to happen. Like he's just waiting for a cab, or they're going to just do this one little thing. And I think a lot of that does come from Pfeiffer and from her performance and for her selling
totally
that making him feel like and making us believe that, okay, if she just needs to do this one little thing and then he's gone, and she totally appreciates it and everything like that, and they'll never see each other again. And I'm with you, man. That is a tricky thing to pull off, and definitely, when you stop and think about it, it should have been like the first thing to fall apart and make the rest of the movie unwatchable, basically, or just a joke. But it's not. Yeah, I mean that's a real feat there. I think that he achieved, and I think a lot of it is in the directing and the pace of the movie and cutting it together and making those scenes believable and then getting those performances. And again, I think Goldblum, Pfeiffer, extremely watchable, but man, Cronenberg I thought was good, and just I loved David Bowie in this. Like he was creepy as hell in this scene. I thought that was a great performance, and like frankly, I wish there had been more of him in this thing.
There's not much at all.
No, he caught me off guard. I was not expecting like him to play a bad guy. I mean, a pretty ruthless villain here, and I think he's good at it. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. And, look, like this is, again, 85. The Middle Eastern stuff, the Iranians, it's easy to point a finger and say these are stereotypes, and there's nothing positive coming out of that side of the table representationally at all. Right. And I understand that. But at least he got some humor out of it that I don't think was just at the expense of them being Iranian. And Landis inserts himself as one of the Iranian guards.
Right.
And these thugs, these like 4 thugs that are constantly following them around and constantly eating nuts and things like that. And by the end of it, I was like kind of like in love with those those thugs, like these like nameless, wordless thugs, basically. I kind of love those little touches. And
how tricky is that? I mean,
super tricky. Yeah.
All these guys are doing is going around busting up places and killing people. That's it.
They're
that's all.
trigger happy.
They don't speak a word of English through the entire movie.
Yeah.
And there's never subtitles as I remember.
Nope.
Like it just says that they're speaking Iranian. But then and then at the end you have kind of the woman in power, who is not a joke.
Yep.
Like she is 100% not a joke. So
Irene
I don't know.
Pappas.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I liked those. I liked those guys a lot. Sure, I liked those guys a lot. Mm-hmm. They were a good part of this movie.
Yeah. I think it's got some nice stylistic chops in this movie as well. I mean, even just from the opening shot, it's an extended aerial shot where you're basically the POV of a plane landing at LAX in the middle of the night. And I just thought that was a cool way to open a movie, I mean, there's no music until like the wheels touch ground, and then you get the B.B. King song, which totally agree. It's a better song for
and
sure.
And it's heavy synthesizers too. Like it feels so 80s. It's great.
It's very 80s. There's a lot of saxophone going on, and one of it was I don't know, just like it set the mood early on. I was like, okay, like this is such a different animal than Spies Like Us.
Yeah.
From everything about it, like it feels just like 2 different people should have made this thing. In a lot of ways. Yeah. I feel like maybe let's give a little bit of background on the Ed character, the Goldblum's character, just a little bit, because I think you're right. Like, the way they really make his work believably is that you understand this guy and you like him. And I thought it was a nice little trick. I mean, I think we meet him, he's in bed and sitting up and just sort of like staring into the distance while his wife is out cold beside him. She's not like nuzzled up against him. It's just like one of those shots that it says a lot without any dialogue.
Yeah. And it's kind of a great little push-in shot, too.
At that point, I was like, oh, well, this might be more of a drama than I was anticipating, Yeah. But you find out that he's basically had insomnia, I think, for, 3 months or so? Just a long time. And I thought it was a lot of fun, actually, to watch Goldblum play a character like that, because and so many things, like, he's just talking, and he's got that sort of like, it's not manic energy, but there's energy behind his words for sure. And boy, this is like, it's not that at all. Like, here's a movie where he's exhausted, and there are moments where there was one in specific, I think, fairly early on with Pfeiffer, maybe when they go visit the set of the TV show, where he's saying something and like he basically just pauses in the middle of the sentence, and it's not for like dramatic flair. It's because he's tired. Like, he's literally sleepy and exhausted. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's such a nice little like touch there. And there's also something just about watching that guy and like his like physicality and his his like shoulder to head ratio is like 70% shoulders and 30% in his little teeny head of his. And he's so like, there's just something animalistic about watching Jeff Goldblum at any pace. And like here it seemed exaggerated, and like, again, I think like that's part of what's so watchable about him, and that's that weird magnetism of him. It's just like he looks like he's just not human in some ways in this thing.
Yeah.
But they made that work for, like, it works for the story in this. It was interesting then to see the home life a little bit, and clearly there's a bit of a disconnect with the wife before they head off to their respective jobs. And again, it's one of those things I think we talked about with something else where they're not at each other's throats.
Right.
It's not that. It's just they're not 100% on the same page. Find out later, of course, the wife is cheating on him, and obviously that's, I think, the big thing that buys you sympathy for that guy in this movie.
Yeah.
How did you like that reveal? I thought it was pretty darn good.
I loved it. Yeah. So they're having this discussion in a coffee shop, right? When he tells her, and it's his character is what grounds this. However goofy the rest of it gets, his character is the one who grounds it, and it works really well. Like, it's a great way to keep everything, low enough to the ground to stay believable, I think.
Yeah, and even just, I mean, the handling of it too. It's like Goldblum, I think he comes home from work because he's exhausted. He's going to take a nap, and the car is there. That's the guy that gives his wife a ride to work every day, and it's like, that's not good. And we you kind of know where that is going, but it's just a matter of what's the execution of it. Well, Goldblum doesn't go inside. He just goes to the window. We don't see what he sees. You just hear like the faintest sounds of people breathing and having sex. And it's like this nice wide shot where he's just standing on his lawn looking pathetic. And then he leaves, and then later you get like this one quick flash and where you actually do see his wife. And it's basically what he's imagining or replaying in his mind is his wife with this other guy. And that's kind of all it is.
Yeah.
And gosh, I'm trying to remember. Now, you do see the wife again after that, but, the whole sort of way into the Michelle Pfeiffer of it all is that, like, that night after, Aykroyd, his buddy at work, has told him that what he ought to do in the middle of the night is get up and go to Vegas because, that city never sleeps, and, he can get loose, get wild, get laid, everything like that, and be home before his wife, wakes up and even realizes he ever left. And so that's what gets him to the airport, right? And he's making that decision about, is he actually going to go get on a plane and do this thing, which I liked. I mean, I think that's a nice little character quirk.
Yeah.
And, you sense that he's not going to do it. In fact, I think he starts his car to leave, and then that's when he sort of bumps into Michelle Pfeiffer, who's running away from this horrific thing. I thought it was worth mentioning that in some ways, this movie is not that different from Commando, if you'll recall, that Schwarzenegger and Radon Chong intersect at an airport with a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, if that's just, and there's weird things about how these plot elements get repeated in a year when you're really examining it. Because this also, Craig, the third movie we've done so far where jewels being stolen are essential to the plot.
What was the first one? Private Resort. And then Desperately Seeking Susan, the earrings.
Oh,
right.
And then here it's these stones that are of like priceless value that were from, I think, the crown jewels of the Shah in Iran. And I don't know, because we haven't even got to the like Jewel of the Nile yet. So I mean, I don't know what was going on at jewelry stores or just in the world of jewels in 1985, but nobody's jewels were safe, and it'll get you killed.
Yeah.
Mistaken identities out the wazoo. So
don't be a jewel thief. Come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's such a crazy thing to think about, that, like, when has that ever been mentioned in your life in the past 20 years or 30 years? Like, people don't talk about jewel thieves.
Not at all.
So
Not
weird.
At all.
But yeah, I think, after they have this intersection, you're right. It is a bit like you're kind of just devising a series of events to keep them together and to try and piece together why this girl is on the run and who she's on the run from and what exactly has she done. Because, they very cleverly explain why they can't just go to the cops. Because I hate that. Like, that's always my first thing. It's like, if there's any reason at all that you could just go to the cops, you got to get that out there for, like, don't drag that out and let the audience think about it. So, I mean, what did you think about, like, the mechanics of all that stuff? And just the way that they kind of moved us through that? Did most of these various places and the going to the brother's apartment, the brother's Bruce McGill, who's an Elvis impersonator, or at least a big Elvis fan.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, is it just those little details that make that kind of stuff better than maybe what it ought to be just on, like, when you look at it on paper, you know?
Well, I think so. I mean, because honestly, there's only a few bits in this where this movie as a thriller works.
Yeah.
Like, really well. And beyond that, like, I never got caught up in the... I never got too caught up in the whole Jules and who wants them for what reason.
You can't.
And that kind of stuff. Like, it wasn't... Yeah, like, even at the end when it all is explained, it's kind of like... It's pretty complex what the jewels are for.
Yeah.
So,
God.
Yeah, so honestly it is. It's little stuff like Bruce McGill as the Elvis impersonator. And even, I mean, that stuff is just being played totally straight.
Yeah.
And actually I was really happy to find out that she's not really a jewel thief, which is kind of the way it had been put to me before. Like, I was
okay.
She's going to be like scaling buildings and stuff like that. And no, she's just as incidental as he is to her own life, you know, like, and so, you know, the fact that they're together and now they have to survive because all of these more powerful people are, you know, have this thing going on, keeps it really interesting. So, and so for that same reason, like, I don't feel like I really need a lot of plot. Like, I kind of just want to stick with them. And I feel like he does want to stick with her. Like, even though things are explained pretty well, and, you know, that he doesn't really make completely dumb movie choices.
Yeah.
I still feel like underlying all of that is he doesn't really want this to end. Like, at least there's a part of him that doesn't want this to be over.
Sure.
Even as dangerous as it is. So, yeah. So it's kind of, that's what kind of keeps me going. It's certainly not the plot. But the fact that the movie keeps moving as quickly as it does, like, I don't know that I really felt bored, or maybe I've just forgotten about scenes where I felt bored, but I don't know.
I didn't either. Like, I think it slowed down a little in the second half. Well, maybe not in the second half, just like towards the last 25 minutes a bit. But yeah, I don't know. In some ways, and I'm not saying these are apples to apples at all. Mm-hmm. I thought of something like Inherent Vice, which I don't know if you even got around to seeing yet or not. But
I haven't.
Like, there's something to, like, that movie and this movie where there's so many minor characters that you come across, and each of them feels kind of like quintessentially LA, right? And these are two totally different time periods, that movie and the book and this. But, you know, just quick examples. You go to a boat at, like, Marina Del Rey, and Lou Ferrigno is the guy that kind of answers the door. And you're like, who the hell is this? And, like, you immediately, I think, at that point, probably led to believe, or at least assume, okay, who is this Yahoo that Michelle Pfeiffer dated, right? Or it's a boyfriend. Like, no, that's not it at all, because you haven't even got to the point yet where you're dealing with her lovers, and it's going to be way more complicated than that. And then you're visiting the set of a TV show, and she's got a friend there. And, okay, yeah, you got to intersect the business a little bit because it's LA. But it's fun. Like, she's an actress, but she's not, like, super famous actress. And so it's not like she's coming in and overwhelming the rest of the plot, or somehow it's going to be about the movie business or anything like that, or it's going to even get into, like, weird, dumb satire of the movie business. No, this is just a friend of hers who's going to end up hiding the stones for Michelle Pfeiffer, and partly because she doesn't want to let Michelle Pfeiffer stay with her. I mean, I think, you know, she sort of says that it's her husband, and it's like, well, this is good. And that I like, too, because it's like, I wouldn't want her to stay with me either. Like, especially at this point. I mean, this girl is clearly like a mess. Like, in a way, she's a different play on the Susan character from Desperately Seeking Susan, you know, a free spirit, if you will. Right. But a much different pitched version of that. And
sure.
I loved all of that. And then, like, even moving into moments where Ed drops her off at an apartment. and it's this lavish apartment. And she's supposed to meet, I think that guy was Iranian or not. I can't remember the guy that was like at that weird casino place. And suddenly, I mean, to me, maybe this scene is where it felt the most like a thriller. But that's definitely a moment where Ed is going to leave. And that's like the perfect time in the movie for him to go, I've seen enough. I wonder, is she really going to be safe up wherever she's going to? Like this woman that clearly like is a magnet for trouble. You know, am I handing her over to someone that's not on level or something bad going to happen? And I just like that. And then, man, like you move into that scene where he goes up to check and you enter this like lavish apartment and it's silent basically with the exception of TVs, and you're moving in that room and like it takes its time. You know, you're really walking around this place, and then you see the dead bodies, and then one of them's, you know, slit from ear to ear basically, and you find out it was Bowie.
One's
and,
like, did she not have like a broken leg or something? Like somebody's kind of like twisted up.
Yeah, it was
pretty gruesome
and like unexpected. I didn't know where they were going with that, and I liked it. I mean, I did it. It ends with this crazy knife fight, and there's the three of them, and like I thought the staging of that was cool and how they got out of that. And you open the elevator, and this dog immediately starts barking, and there's just like that's where I think like this movie excels compared to something else that it's going to do. And it'll be interesting to watch this movie actually, I think, in connection to something like After Hours from this year.
Yeah.
Where it's sort of the same kind of setup in a weird way, but this is much more of a thriller and has those like little action pieces a little bit. But there's some good tension, and like a lot of it just comes from continually piling on like these layers of details so that it remains hard to predict, I think. You know, I mean, you know that they're going to end up together in some capacity by the end of this movie, right? Yeah, I know if you've ever seen a movie, that's pretty clear. But still, like, I don't know, they did some cool stuff there.
Although, I'll be honest with you, not that I want to jump all the way to the end.
No, go ahead. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I mean, that to me, actually, that was my biggest concern watching this was, are they going to fall in love by the end of this thing?
Right.
You know? So let's talk about the ending then. Let's do it.
Well, I guess my thing is when I got to the end, and I can be pretty gullible for endings like this if I've enjoyed the rest of the movie. I'm not so on guard at that point. But like I felt like at the end of this movie, the ending of this movie could go either way. Like the tone of this movie, I feel like the end of this movie could go either way. She is gone, or he thinks she's gone, but she's not gone. And so it was kind of a nice surprise. It wasn't an amazing surprise, but it was a nice surprise at the end that it was kind of a good thing. I mean, but the other thing is like they didn't profess love for each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like they kind of got to the end and they were like, if anyone's in love with anybody, he's maybe starry-eyed over her more than anything. But at the same time, it's I don't know. It's the kind of thing where it does feel like they have it. It wasn't just a string of action scenes, and then at the end they're in love with each other. Yeah, like they've actually bonded over this time. Like there's definitely a lot of scenes of tension, but there's a lot of scenes of them just sitting and talking, and sort of actually getting to know each other and stuff like that. So like at the end of this one, I feel better about them being together in some capacity than I have in other movies.
I do too. And I think a lot of that is because of how the Pfeiffer character is. Like she's not just a damsel in distress. She's actually a participant in this whole thing because she, you know, she got the stones herself. I mean, she was part of that and part of the reason they came back over to this country. So like, to me, that works better than this is just, like, even, like, the Radon Chon thing. And it's not like her and Schwarzenegger hooking up in that movie. But for them to, or, like, Rambo, like, for them to have any sort of connection, it has to be believable to me that the woman, it would be capable of falling. Like, forget who the guy is or what he's made out of or what his, like, personality or his moral well-being, any of that. Is this the kind of woman that will fall for somebody in 2 days, right? Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie absolutely is that kind. Like she is the kind of woman that would make a bad choice, right? And not that Ed is a bad choice, and not that again, like you don't get the sense from her that she's like in love with this guy or that they're gonna be married for the rest of their lives or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there might be something there, you know. I mean, she's definitely the kind of person that would at least take a chance on that, and you know, I mean, she was involved with Richard Farnsworth, right? So,
right. But to bring up the example of Commando, as you were, I mean, you know, the end of that movie, it's presented to us that Radon Chong wanting to be a part of this family is a great idea.
Yeah.
In real life, if you had gone through all of that with someone,
chance.
Would you ever want to see that person again? Mm-mm. I mean, it's just like, sure, at the end he says he's never going to go back to this, but it's like, it seems like you're going to be in mortal danger every second of your life.
Yeah.
Like, why? That is a bad choice. Like, if you told your girlfriends, I'm going to go with this guy. He tore the seat out of my car, and maybe drive around with him, and I watched him murder like 3 people.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you cannot be with him. So yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly right. Like, she would make this decision. It might turn out good, but she can't know it's good yet.
Yeah.
So
no. And if she made a bad decision, it would not be the first. So yeah, I liked that. And also like, you know, not to completely discredit the man in that situation, but I bought Ed's level of interest in her at that point as well. And also, again, just sort of playing into a guy whose daily life did not turn out the way he expected, or just has taken a turn towards the mundane and depressing, and clearly keeping him awake at night. So this is an alternative to that for sure. Going to Mexico with this woman and a bunch of money is definitely a change of lifestyle, and one I would be interested in a sequel about, possibly.
Yeah,
if you want to write it, Craig. Yeah, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? What the hell happened to these two people?
We still got everybody around, just about.
Yeah,
let's give it a shot.
Now, also at the end of this movie, Craig, we got Jonathan Demme's cameo, and Clu Gulager shows up there as a cop. I just wanted to take 2 seconds to point out that Clu Gulager looks about 20 years older than he did in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which came out the same year. I don't know how that happened. If it's just his hair. Yeah.
He is. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but he's clearly playing the old guy on the force in this movie, the old cop. And he was playing the dad of a teenager in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So there you have it.
Love it.
You know, the only sort of thing, and I don't know, this is really not that much of a deal, that I didn't quite care for with the Michelle Pfeiffer plot was, I wrote down, it took 40 minutes for her to actually finally explain to Goldblum that they killed the guy at the airport and who that guy was. Because remember, he didn't see that. Like, he just, like, she jumps on his hood, basically, in the airport parking garage. I don't know. Like, that to me is like, it just felt like if that happened maybe 5-10 minutes earlier, I think it would have worked a little better. Also, it's because, well, we as the audience, we know that a guy got killed. Like, that's
right.
You know, we saw that happen. So,
well, it doesn't seem like a super consequential piece of information for Jeff Goldblum at that point, because I mean, these 4 guys chased her to his car, and I mean, we're firing guns at them, were they not? Like,
oh yeah.
So it, you know, to then find out, well, just before that happened, they killed the guy. It'd be like, not very surprising. So I don't know why she would keep it from him.
Yeah,
like it seems like she would keep it from him so that he wouldn't get spooked and leave her, you know, all by herself. But yeah, again, like he saw enough for that not to be a huge, I don't know, determining factor.
Yeah, and then,
so that was kind of odd.
Yeah, and then I think the other sort of odd choice that isn't necessarily like, well, I guess it kind of has to do with her character's decision, is when they do sneak to Richard Farnsworth's house, who is like this millionaire guy that I think she used to be involved with as a mistress of sorts, and they access the property by going through this little secret tunnel of sorts, service entrance, if you will. And I'm trying to think of another movie where I've seen anything like this happen before, and it's hard to think of one. That Michelle Pfeiffer, this is the middle of the day, she's like, oh, there's, I don't know if they're guards, but it was gardeners, I think, were working. She's like, the gardeners will be here all day, we'll have to wait till night. I'm just going to take a nap. And so he was like, what, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, we'll have to wait till dark. So that is what happens. Like, she sits down in this little weird tunnel and takes a nap. And he, of course, like it because he's got insomnia. So I thought, okay, like, she's going to try to fall asleep, and he's going to sit there for 2 minutes. Like, there's no way I'm sitting here until dark. We're going to go do something else. But no, it's like you cut to, and it's like, it's 9 hours later. It's dark now. Wake up. And he hasn't slept at all. And, I mean, that's a weird choice. Like, especially that's definitely like in the last 45 minutes of the movie, for sure. I mean, you're past the midpoint. How did you feel about that decision? Did that stick out to you at all?
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But it's just more movie to love as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, it is like, I don't know. I don't dislike it. I just think it's really kind of a bizarre thing it's like, okay, we're just going to like reset the timeline here a little bit. It's like we're going to take a breather. Yeah. And then it'll be dark and we can continue.
Certainly, I don't know. I don't know that it served another plot purpose anywhere. Like, it does kind of feel like they could have just, like, the script could have just as easily had them go up there and say, oh, well, it's 3:10, at 3:15 all the gardeners leave, we can go across then.
Yeah.
But instead, no, we're going to sleep here for 9 hours, and then we're just going to cut that part out of the movie, and then it's 9 hours later. Like, I don't know exactly why.
Yeah.
Except that maybe, I mean, the movie is called Into the Night. They got to keep it at night.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen across a couple days, so maybe they just got to wait till later.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's kind of a funny little choice there.
It is a funny choice, but then it is also, as you pointed out, like just the fact that she can very easily fall asleep in basically like a sewer tunnel.
Yeah.
And he can't sleep anywhere.
Right.
It's it actually kind of still works with their characters. So
yeah.
It was odd. It's definitely odd.
And then, of course, the ultimate payoff to that is like after everything's gone down and they've been interrogated by the cops and told that they have to stay in this hotel room and not leave for 24 hours, and they're going to be left completely alone. And Michelle Pfeiffer takes a shower, and she comes out. She just has the towel wrapped around her, and Goldblum's out cold. And it was I liked. I mean, I kind of anticipated that at some point he was going to fall asleep in this movie, and that it would be satisfying. And I liked that resolution there.
Yeah, me too.
What about just prior to that, then, just kind of like the big sort of climax of this movie happens at the airport again, when it seems like they've done everything they can do they got the stones, they got half of the stones back to the woman, the Iranian woman that wanted them or was after them. They left word of where the other half would be, and they could get them now that once, that Goldblum and Pfeiffer had rendezvoused at the airport and were about to get on a plane to Mexico. This is the only movie I can think of that I've ever seen where a plane was delayed or anybody taking a plane was delayed for a mechanical reason. And I'm just like, oh, thank God. Because I get delayed every time I go to the airport. And I was like, that's such a good device. Of course, I think it's implied that the Iranian thugs perhaps had something to do with that delay when they get off the plane and those four guys are standing there. And
standing right there.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I didn't anticipate the extent of the shootout in the scene that would follow, because suddenly it's not just those guys. You've got this French guy that's been involved and after them and after the Stones and his two thugs. And then there's clearly undercover cops that are following this whole thing as well. And there's some bloodshed in that moment, man.
Oh, yeah.
Landis gets a good death himself on a magazine rack. But did it surprise you? Did you see it coming or that kind of conclusion period? And then let alone this sort of level of violence that was the way it was handled, especially with that suicide. Like the guy that ultimately shot himself. Like, what did you think about all that?
Well, I mean, that was the biggest surprise, and honestly, the biggest thing about the suicide bit was, for me, is I couldn't figure out if that was supposed to be a joke or not.
Oh, really? Oh,
like,
okay.
Because like was it a punchline to something? And I didn't, because I mean, obviously it was not portrayed like with like cartoon sounds or anything. But
he's dead.
Like it's but I mean, yeah, it's like pretty realistic. But I mean, what Goldblum is saying to the guy up until then is like, I don't know, is kind of taking the guy into his own mind of just having a worthless existence or something.
Yeah, like
and then the guy turns the gun on himself. Like, I didn't understand that bit at all. Like, did that was there a connection that you made there?
No, and in fact, I didn't understand why necessarily he did it at all. This is basically we're talking about the last thug standing here has got 20 cops pointing and security guards at the airport pointing guns at him. He's holding Michelle Pfeiffer hostage. The cops have proven that they are not at all afraid to shoot in the general direction of public if they can possibly take out a bad guy. So I thought the natural route out of that would just be to give yourself up at that point, because you're not shooting your way out of there. And all your other thugs are dead, and wouldn't you rather just be alive and go to jail? I guess maybe I'm just revealing something about myself here. But now he after Goldblum gets in a few good lines about how worthless he is as a human being, and not in power just because he has a gun or whatever. The guy points it at himself and shoots his brains on the wall and blood all over Goldblum and Pfeiffer, and it's intense. I did not see that being the resolution to that scene. I will say that much.
No, although it is the tone that I was hoping for. Yeah, it was the kind of thing I was hoping for.
Yeah. I do think you're right there. I mean, I feel like it maybe needed to build to that.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that also I think excuses Goldblum and Pfeiffer sort of staying together, or at least leaning upon each other after that, I mean, just having gone through the intensity of that.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. It caught me off guard a little bit. And it's another one of those things where I can see like certain audience, like not going into this expecting anything like that, and that just being like, well, nope, I didn't like this movie. I sure didn't. I can't believe they did that. Yeah, it's a bold choice in a way.
It is.
There's other moments of violence for sure. I mean, the thugs, they kill the actor's friend in the ocean while other people are watching. And by the way, the husband, I think that was Paul Mazursky. Like, he wasn't. He was not the husband. He's just basically the lover.
Right.
Boy, he did not get up off that couch to go after her or try to save her when she took off running at the house there.
Yeah.
That was kind of...
I didn't... There's logistics of that were kind of hard to understand.
Yeah. But I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely was like, okay, like these guys mean business. They are going after those stones and ready to kill anybody else, because there's some stuff with them that was strictly comedic before that. I mean, you got Landis getting a suit made in Beverly Hills and trying to run out of the store in just his like underwear while he's wearing a suit top, after spotting Goldblum. And like the way that was played was definitely comedic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Those thugs work in both genres there in this movie, which is always fun.
They're the bridge.
What else you want to say about this movie, man?
I don't know that I have anything else to say. I want to save some surprises for anyone who might want to watch it. But I really recommend it. I know there's that Blu-ray out there that I made. So I'm going to see how much that is, because man, I could definitely watch this a few more times.
Yeah, and I also feel like in some ways knowing the plot might not be a bad thing going in a little bit, because I think that sometimes maybe helps with some of the tonal stuff. But so much good here. I mean, even just like we said, like from a stylistic standpoint, from execution, from performance, for sure. If you're not feeling the plot and the story 100% of the way, I think you'll still find enough to be satisfied and really interested in here. Just a cool. This is a movie that I just like. That's a cool movie, you know, like where I feel like just saying that alone is like a fitting description for this thing.
Yeah, I think so.
You asked me to pay attention to post credits here.
That's right.
You want to talk about that thing?
Did you watch all the way to the end?
I did, yes.
So at the very end, there's a card that comes up, and this is not unusual at all for a Landis movie, but for some reason I feel like I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
This card comes up at the end of the movie that says has a painting of a trolley and some flats, it's like a back lot, and it says, "When in Hollywood, visit Universal Studios. Ask for Babs." Did you know anything about that going in?
Nothing.
About this this card?
No, I don't know. Do you know what it means too?
Yeah,
okay.
So apparently it has to do with at the end of National Lampoon's I've got it here. National Lampoon's Animal House's credits calls back to something from the main part of the film, specifically the film's closing moments revealing the futures facing members of the Delta and Omega fraternities.
Right.
Martha Smith's character of Babs is revealed to have become a tour guide at Universal Studios.
Okay.
So basically this was at the end of Animal House, and then he, as he likes to do, Landis put this at the end of Universal movies that he made. So it's the end of, apparently it's at the end of Blues Brothers, American Werewolf in London, Into the Night, obviously, and Blues Brothers 2000, if you haven't seen it yet.
Well, there you go. He is such a movie nerd, isn't he?
He is. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
It makes it really fun, at least for somebody like me anyway. I love it.
I mean, I think, I listening to the T-Up episode, and I think the quote that you read from Vincent Canby about, this movie feeling like it was, designed to be screened on the Bel Air director's circuit for just his friends or whatever. I mean, it seems like he's been doing that from the start, hasn't it? I mean, even the See You Next Wednesday thing, I'm sure that was just some crap he said to some of his filmmaker friends or whatever. And it's I'm just going to put it in everything. That's such an inside thing. It's crazy. Usually, I don't know of a ton of directors that ever worked at this level that get that kind of stuff in there to this degree, at least.
No, it is kind of amazing.
Yeah. So good on him. Good on him, Craig.
Good for you, John Landis.
Any general takeaway about Landis as a director from these two movies? I mean, any sort of what are the similarities between these damn two things?
Man, there's not a whole lot.
Isn't that crazy? I know. I'm sitting here thinking Dan Aykroyd is in both of them. That's about.
Well, it's like the humor. The humor, I definitely see where the humor feels similar.
Kind of.
I mean, the Four Iranians.
Yeah.
Feels like something that could be in Spies Like Us.
You're right.
But it's,
so I'll
if I didn't know who directed these, would I make that connection? Probably not. But it is, I started watching American Werewolf in London the other night.
Oh, nice.
And that one is really almost exclusively serious.
Yeah.
It has funny moments. The fact that I never thought about this before, but when we first see those two characters in the movie American Werewolf in London, they're riding in the back of a truck with just tons of sheep. And it's just that seems exactly right. They're just sheep to this guy. Anyway, but it's very serious. So it's, his serious side is all through Into the Night. And it feels very much like American Werewolf in London in those places. You can kind of see it, but yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if there's really if you're watching a Spielberg movie from the shots, you can feel that in the shots. I don't know if I could pick a Landis movie out of a lineup. If there was, if I had no idea he did it and I didn't know about it before, I don't know. What about you?
I wouldn't believe you until I saw the credit. If you just showed me these two movies and said they're the same director, I think I would have a hard time. I mean, unless you just okay, there's John Landis in this movie, and you're nerdy enough to pick up on the fact that there's 8 million other directors in these two movies acting.
Right.
But beyond that, I don't think so, man. I don't know. It's so cool. I'm glad that we did this and kind of stumbled into this because, yeah, in many ways they feel like complete opposite sides of a similar coin of this dude's brain. And it's really interesting to watch them back to back like that. And I don't know. I haven't done enough research, but he might be the one and only dude that we could have done. Well, no, John Hughes will be the other one that I know of who had 2 movies in '85, but that doesn't happen very often, right?
I think Donner had 2 movies.
Did he? Okay.
I think wait, did he do Lady Hawk?
Man, I don't know.
Come on, dude. If only the internet had some sort of
I'm not gonna look it up.
Site, sort of an internet movie database.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
I think it's wrong.
So he did those 2, but
Cool.
but yeah, I mean it's certainly remarkable that he got all that done.
Yeah, and that they're this different. I mean, that to me is a big
yeah.
That they're this different. That's
Agreed.
pretty impressive and surprising. So for me, it's a new appreciation for that guy, or a renewed appreciation for him, and even Spies Like Us. I think it's still a lot of fun to watch. I mean, like anything I leveled at it critically, I did find myself for the most part entertained and easy to swallow that movie and enjoy it, even if it doesn't hit every comedic bullseye that you want it to.
Sure.
So yeah, I think you should go watch both of them now that we've talked about them for almost 2 hours. If you're listening to this at home and you haven't seen it, go find them. They are easy to find at an internet streaming outlet. You're probably going to have to pay for them, but they're out there. And come back next time. We're going to tee up at least 2, possibly more next week. I can't remember.
Yeah.
This will be out, right before Thanksgiving. So hope you have a very lovely holiday with your turkeys.
Agreed.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, endings.